That was Silent Movie by Natasha Bedingfield. I thought a fitting song as I welcome my guest for today. Hello, Louise Johnson.
Hi, Andy. It's nice to see you again.
Yes, indeed. Now, I'll be honest, I don't always have the option to do this, but Silent Movie by Natasha Bedingfield, I thought history of movies
hmm
is kind of where it began. And then not like the movies will follow us with Katy Perry
Oh,
because
amazing.
it's got the word for me. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I'm working out what layers I need in these temperatures and
Yes.
things like that.
I was joking, as I like to frequently do, that here in the UK, the weather is so exciting. Do you go out in scuba gear with suntan lotion and your thermals? Because literally that could be the morning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just don't know. Now, let's start with the Sheffield Film Festival. Andy Godfrey connected us for a chat. Just give us a bit of an overview. What is the Sheffield Film Festival, which is a part of what you do every year?
Mhm.
What's the Sheffield Film Festival all about?
Thanks. Yes, it was really nice for Andy to put us in touch. So Sheffield Christian Film and Media Festival is the full title, but it is a mouthful. So we shorten it to SCFF usually in writing, but that's also a bit of a trip on the tongue. Um, it's a film festival that I started back in 2020, so right in the middle of lockdown. I trained as a filmmaker. I went to Sheffield Hallam University for film and media production for my degree. And over the years, was just trying to kind of understand where Christians fit into the filmmaking landscape. I think media making, and you might find this as a radio presenter, it can pose challenges for Christians in terms of lifestyle, kind of ethics questions, questions around what content people produce, what content people consume. And I wanted to basically create an environment where Christians could gather together to celebrate the filmmaking process, to learn from each other, to build some community. There have been Christian film festivals in the UK in the past, so I started out trying to see if there were people I could just connect with and maybe, create like a Sheffield-based hub for what they were doing or something. But at the point that I was starting up, those things seemed to have dissolved and dissipated. So we had to start something completely from scratch.
Which is a bigger challenge, but also a greater opportunity, depending on your perspective.
Yes, and I'm trying to see it as an opportunity while it does have challenges.
Now, we chatted off the back of last year's festival, Andy Godfrey again. He
hmm
introduced you to Maranella, who was at your festival, who's also doing production, direction of films.
Yes.
And we chatted a while ago, and one of the things that she similarly said was she refound what it was to have a faith, having been in movies for quite a while. She did a lot of the
Mm.
get this wrong, not the main bit of film, but the next bit. Is that the B bit? Is that the other bit around it you don't think about that's part of the main film? I'm not doing
Yeah, I mean, maybe you would call it production, like
that
the
might be it.
the
I,
framework.
I don't do the movies, can you tell? But she was saying similarly that as she came to sort of refining her faith in her older, not as a younger person, but I think she had it when she was younger, she found herself thinking, oh, how do I feel about what I'm seeing now, what I'm part of? And well, where does that fit into what I've been doing and made a career of? And I'm very popular and successful. But then I got the
Yeah.
faith, and how do those two kind of mash together fluently so I don't feel like I'm kind of being distorted in all sorts of places? Might be how I would say what she was talking about. But that sounds similar to some of the questions you've been asking.
Yeah, I think, and not to sound sort of like a cop out, but I think I really enjoy holding the spectrum. As we experience within the Christian church anyway, there's a whole spectrum of belief, understanding, doctrine. And in terms of Christians interacting with media, there is a whole spectrum of thought from people who really want to spend their time making films with an evangelistic purpose and to do that really well, versus, all the way through to some Christians who just want to participate in the mainstream media making process to just be a presence there, regardless of the content they're making. I know Christians who want to specialize in horror films because they feel like it gives them a chance to talk about spiritual themes in a kind of a less direct way. And I really enjoy holding, making a place for people with all those approaches and thoughts to come together and still be kind of united in the faith that we share. Um, and again, not to sound like a cop out, I don't know if I've really landed on where I think I sit in that spectrum for myself as a filmmaker, but I think it's beautiful that Christians are approaching media from all those different perspectives.
One of the things that I like about, and we had this right from the very beginning when we launched Pure, is I love music.
Yeah.
And some of those people might present themselves as people of faith. Some of them might not. But for me personally, all I really cared about was the music. And as long as it's not got bad language, that was our only kind of condition. And we've stuck with that for 3 years. No bad language. We call that 3 Point Pure. If it hasn't got bad language, hey, I'm good. Because why? Because music is good. And there's plenty of Christian radio stations out there, and they're doing that. We've never wanted to be that, because for us, music is first and foremost is something that should be good. We get, how to put this politely, we get lots of demands to play certain bits of sounds and music and stuff from song makers and stuff and songwriters, but some of it is so poor quality, we're never going to play it on the radio. It might be the best thing they've ever done, and that's not a criticism of them, but audio quality really does matter. And I think there are plenty of really good artists who have created such amazing music, whether they're people who describe themselves of having faith or not. And I think that's the kind of the bubble that we love to sit in, because ultimately we want to keep it about the music. So we can go from Sarah Reeves to Nirvana to Bon Jovi to Matthew West, and it makes sense because it's each of those is good in its own right. That's what I like. Now, they don't really fit in so many scenarios. Well, actually, they do, because it just gets played, and they're all great tunes.
I remember my mum, I can't remember what song she was listening to, but it was a mainstream secular kind of love song, and she was using it as a worship song because the essence of it was an outpouring of love, and that I really loved hearing her talk about that.
I think it's, yeah, I think Jeff Lucas said it very well. He let us use some of his own words on our website, because he summed it up perfectly about the creative nature that's in every single one of us. And if we say, well, we're only going to listen to that section of music or that genre or that format, then all of a sudden we're shutting down so many creative people with amazing gifts and talents. And actually, we might find ourselves enjoying it. Back in the day, my wife and I sometimes, pre-streaming, we grab a video that perhaps wouldn't be the genre that either of us would like, but we grab it and think, well, let's watch something completely radically different from what we might enjoy. And to be honest, most of the time they were awful, but every so often watch a film and think, do you know, that's brilliant, and we'd never have seen that had we not just thought, let's get that one. We don't like any of the people in there, we don't even like that sort of film, hey, let's get it anyway, because it opens your it's entertainment ultimately, and it's different and it's good fun. So you've talked about some of your own kind of journey, obviously Sheffield Hallam University. Why, I mean, where did that come from? Going back to school, why did you choose to go to school, do, I guess, GCSEs, A levels, and then think, I'll go to university and study this further? Where did that passion start from?
Now, this is the long history, Andy. Just cut me off when my time is over. My initial interest as a child was in costume design. So I loved to sew, and I still love to sew. And, you know, as a child, you're thinking, how can I make my hobby my job? And I loved watching films. I loved watching all the old period dramas and the movie musicals with the amazing dresses that spin out, you know. And I was like, well, I can't be an actress, but I could make the beautiful clothes that actresses get to wear. And that was, get through school, GCSEs, that was what I thought I was working towards. And through one thing and another, that's not the route that I took. So I finished my A levels and started applying to or looking at universities and realizing that I didn't quite have the art qualifications I needed to get onto costume design courses. So I decided to do an extra year at college to get an art foundation course. So all my friends went off to university and I stayed. I'm actually from Sheffield originally. I have left. I've come back. All my friends had gone off to university. I stayed, went to the local college for a year, again applied to costume courses, having got a portfolio together, and was rejected by all 5 that I'd applied to. So I had to rethink life. And I was always the person that was on the normal path, and I was going to do the university route and da, 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 da. And I was in this place where, you know, five rejections and going, what on earth do I do now? And thankfully, as somebody with a faith, I grew up in the church and thankfully was surrounded by people who encouraged me to pray. Um, I felt like God had used the words go and be discipled. And that was quite a new word to me. So I Googled discipleship and I found Youth with a Mission, who are an international organization that run things called discipleship training schools. And the more I looked into it, the more I felt like that was the direction I was being led in. So I at the age of 19, left my home, got a plane all by myself to the Caribbean, to Central America, uh, landed and thought, I really hope nobody, cuts me up and sticks me in a freezer right now. And it turned out that everybody who I'd been interacting with through YWAM was quite normal. So I engaged in this 3 month discipleship school. We went off and did a 2 month outreach. I did an internship with a church, and I decided that's what I wanted to do. So for 3 years, I actually stayed with YWAM as a staff member and helped to lead these schools and lead outreaches. And in the process, I was trying to work out how to communicate with people at home. So I started to make little videos, rather than writing an email newsletter, I started to make little videos. I discovered video editing. And over time, I thought, well, maybe my interest in film is broader than costume. It's still there. So after about 3.5 years, I came back home. Uh, I did another year at college. I did an apprenticeship in the arts. So I got paid half of minimum wage. I got to work in a Christian arts centre for a year and learn about the broader arts administration world. And then I applied to university again. And having traveled a lot, I said, right, I think I need to stay quite local this time. So I'd applied to York, Leeds, and Sheffield. Sheffield were the only people that accepted me. But I think, ultimately it was the right place for me. And through that, again, I discovered this broader interest in film. I got to look at film theory. I got to do some film criticism. I got to also learn about some specific Christians who've engaged with film over the century that we've had film, and discovered that what my real interest was in producing, which is kind of the administrative side of filmmaking. And I think that ultimately led me to start the film festival because, my part in it is the organization. I create the structure for other people to exhibit their work. So that's the long spiel of how I got to where I am.
That wasn't long. That was quite. So I like that. But I like how you go down one path and then you kind of find yourself going somewhere else. And I normally do this at the end of an interview, but I love how so frequently people will talk about, well, I was going down this road and that's what I did, whether it was a really, really rocky start or they'd fallen into crime or something. But there's something of an interest that then 10, 20, 30, 40 years later, then that becomes suddenly really important rather than something to not be happy with or to have only ever been able to do it to a really low level. Perhaps it was just an interest. I like a bit of cycling, so I did the odd bit of bike maintenance, and now I get to run a bike creation place. So I don't know. It fascinates me how it can kind of come full circle. But I love how you started off. Well, I want to design dresses. That was the passion. You got a few no's, which it's never much fun. But then you were able to veer off in a different direction. But actually, you still came back to what you loved, which is, I guess, ultimately it's the movie world, the film TV sort of universe.
Yeah, I think so. And speaking of music as well, to bring in a music element, I don't know if you've come across the artist Philippa Hanna, but she had a song that has become and continues to be a bit of an anthem for me. I think the name of the song is "It's All Right," and the refrain is basically "It's all right, everything's going to be all right. Everyone has a path to find. It may be the hardest thing, but essentially." Take your time, find the path, and it will work out in the end, which we do believe with God that, our ways aren't his ways, but we do have to sort of do that surrender, don't we? And then see what he's ultimately got for us.
I was really chuffed we got asked to go to Truth and Treason to the screening in London, and we interviewed all sorts of people, cast and crew. One of the people I chatted to was the producer of the movie, who'd worked with the director for quite a long time. And I always got confused thinking, well, what does a producer do, and what does a
Mm.
director do? Because surely they're both shaping and steering. But he said what you said, that as a producer, he basically creates the framework upon which everything can then be built up for the movie. Um, just because I find films fascinating in as much as I really don't understand how what I see is what I see, because I know, for example, that they might do a storyboard and they'll map out all the parts of the film, and then you'll see a particular moment of the film where one of the, I don't know, the actors has got a full head of hair and they're looking great, and but that may be one of the first parts that's been shot because they then get shaved for the first part of the film. So you're watching a part of the film thinking, well, actually, this end bit was the start. Help me understand, because I find this genuinely fascinating. How on earth do you actually put a film together when you have to say, well, we're in this location, so all the parts of the film, including the first and last scene, are being shot at the same time? Because the actors, I mean, they're very good, but they're then got to have all the maturity of having been that character for 50 years at the start of the film when they haven't even started playing. How do you do that part?
Now, this is where my nerdy spreadsheet side comes out. And I've really only worked on kind of small films, so essentially take what I say and expand it, exponentially to fit your Hollywood budget films. There are essentially amazing pieces of software that you feed your script into, and you say where all of your locations are, and it will automatically tell you when to schedule your filming bit based on location. So it'll say, oh, these three scenes happen in this location, so it's more efficient to film those all on that day. And and you'll work out your costume and hair changes around that, and so on. So from the producing side of things, it's taking a well-written, a well-structured script, which I don't know how many people would understand really, that scripts, yes, tell the story and yes, build character, but are also quite technical documents. So I mean, anybody could go and Google, pick your favorite Hollywood film and Google such and such script, and you'll be able to find copies of screenplays, um, and they're describing where the scene takes place, and it says whether it's interior, exterior, is it day or night, and all this sort of information that will instruct the crew. So your lighting technicians, your gaffers, your cinematographers, set designers, everything that they need to know is actually written down in this document, as well as all of the lines and the plot and the emotion. So cheers to screenwriters, really. And the producer's job is to take that and to just make sure that all the bits that are written down actually appear on screen, in collaboration with the director, of course.
I was watching a bit about the Lord of the Rings because I like looking at the other stuff. I like watching the film. I like the extra bits on the DVD. Honestly, as I get older, I more and more appreciate that. Watching how they worked out how to do one of the Matrix scenes where, Trinity jumps in the air and the camera spins, and you're thinking, how did they do that? Well, that was given to someone. I want to do that.
Yeah.
But we can't do that. So how do we do that? So they had to literally create and generate the technology and the mechanics of that particular scene. But I do like watching the extras because it gives you a glimpse of how things were made. But in the Lord of the Rings, they were saying, well, we were writing stuff literally the day before, because the way that particular scene works, all of a sudden we want to change things, and the scenes that we had, well, they might still be there, but the character development was such that, well, that doesn't make sense. Now we need to go in a slightly different direction. So then they're working away, the screenwriters, which I don't think I ever really. I can't say I put them down. I just didn't really understand what screenwriters do. I mean, to me, there are a bunch of people with typewriters writing a story, but it's so much more than that.
And I don't know how many films are made the same way as Lord of the Rings. Those, the extended version DVDs with all the extras absolutely fueled my desire to be involved in filmmaking, because they gave you so much insight into those different processes. And yeah, I mean, I think that degree of rewriting is a producer's worst nightmare. And it can get expensive because you're having to rearrange things that you'd planned out before. But yeah, I mean, what I really loved about that was that their desire was to just convey the story in the best way possible. and to make sure that the words did what they were supposed to do in terms of translating the novels to screen.
What was another thing I saw? It was an interview with somebody. I forget the name of the actor. It was their first time being like a proper big actor, and they had always used a motorbike to get everywhere because they were poor, basically. They had their first. You're going to be like, in a big movie, and it was somewhere across Europe, and they lived in the UK. So I thought, great, I'll just take a motorbike like I always would and ride across Europe to get to the thing. When they arrived, they had to have a bit of a chat, saying, if you fell off because you're the kit critical, the entire movie stops.
Yeah.
So please don't ride your bike because there's always a possibility. Let us fly you somewhere because literally your one character is actually required. And it was just interesting because they'd never considered being that not important as a person, but important to the ability to make the film because their face needed to be in that location. So riding a bike across Europe, very good fun. Not the best advice for the producers probably were thinking.
Bit of an insurance risk.
um, What films have you worked on then? Because you say you got into films as a producer. Where was your kind of, I suppose, is there apprenticeship? How do you start producing a film? Like, where is there like a yellow pages for, let's call a producer? How do you get to that place?
Um, I think there's just a need to have a bit of gumption, and I've had a few different experiences that have all worked out slightly differently. And in some ways, I'm kind of hesitant to call myself a film producer in that, I've not made tons. In recent years, the focus has shifted to the film festival. What I did do is I worked on a documentary about the history of flooding in Sheffield, which was a commission by the Sheffield and Rotherham Wildlife Trust, and that came to me through the director. The director and I had worked on some videos for New Wine, so we had spent the best part of 2 years recording the amazing, I don't know if anybody will have heard of Bob Hopkins, essentially trying to capture all of Bob's knowledge about church planting uh, and recording that for New Wine. Uh, so the project about Sheffield flooding had come to the director, and then he'd wanted a producer to come and help support with the organisation. So he wanted to take care of the creative side and the storytelling and the aesthetics. And he wanted someone to make sure that the contracts were in place, that the risk assessments had happened, that, was helping him to find contributors and things like that. So in that case, that particular opportunity came through the prior relationship with Tom, and I'd actually brought the New Wine opportunity to him, and that had come through a neighbour essentially. So, so my experience has been quite. I don't even know what word to use. Lucky is the wrong word. I think just being in the right place at the right time, and a lot of it comes through relationship. As a student, I did an internship with a local production company called Far North Film. So that was run by two brothers, Toby and Fionn Watts. Again, everybody can kind of Google them and see what they're up to. And so I'd met their collaborators. They'd given me opportunities to work on some drama shorts that they were producing, and in that case, I was more of a runner really, and just doing the odd jobs and picking up anything. Through that, I'd met a sound recordist producer called Brian Gray, and he took me onto a job as his boom operator. So I got to work on a short drama film called The Princess Under the Stairs, where we were running around, I think it was Bolton Castle and things like that. Um, so, that was another kind of foot into the door that way, and gave me more experience of being on an actual film set over a period of several days. So really, I suppose the opportunities have come through relationship, and I've had the opportunity, really fortunately, to try a few different hats on before kind of going, no, I think really producing is the thing. Not again, I feel like I'm talking too much, but it is radio. I suppose the other factor is, so after I'd worked on these New Wine videos, it was around 2019, 2020, I actually became really ill. So over the course of 2020 and 2021, I was diagnosed with 3 different autoimmune illnesses.
Wow.
So just as I felt like I was getting onto a bit of a role doing some kind of freelance filmmaking and working quite closely with this director, Tom Rowley, uh, we'd got a really good working relationship going. Uh, I suddenly couldn't essentially move for about 6 months, um, and had to really assess life, the whole of life, my purpose, uh, what my life expectancy might be, all sorts of things. Um, and uh, you know, I think with filmmaking, and if there are any filmmakers listening who have a different experience, please do write in. Um, I think with filmmaking, there is this kind of hustle culture. A lot of the time, it is just that, there are limited jobs and limited opportunities, and a lot of talented people who are going for lots of, not very many opportunities. So there is a bit of a hustle culture and mentality, and being ill really made me stop engaging with that. Uh, and had become more reliant on God in lots of different ways. And what I'd really felt God say to me in that period was that I was valuable whether I make or produce anything in my life or not, that my value was not dependent on anything I created or did or achieved. Um, so it was coming out of the illness that really I thought, I can't stretch myself. I don't have the physical energy necessarily to run around making films anymore. So I really wanted to pivot, and felt like he'd given me this really specific kind of mandate really for the film festival, and have then sort of shifted to focus on that. And the film festival is something I do on a voluntary basis. So I have a paid job working for a theology college in Sheffield, and the film festival is the passion project.
You're talking about obviously a bit about faith as we go through. Let's go into that as well, because where you talked about church growing up and how that shaped you. Where did faith for you begin? What was that like growing up? And where did faith become more than something that you observe, but something that you actually wanted to take part of?
So I grew up in church, and it's quite funny now working with theologians. I've kind of got a lot more language to use to describe my church experience, but I also think I'm probably going to describe it wrong. I'd say I grew up in a sort of a non-denominational, um, Pentecostal charismatic church. My mum had grown up Catholic, so that, there were faith roots throughout the family history. My dad had grown up in a Pentecostal church. They met at university, and mum decided to leave Catholicism behind and become, what do we call it, Protestant. So there's a long family history of faith. So, it was church every Sunday. And I think really it was the impact of youth and children's workers on my life who just kept feeding truth, in small doses through Sunday school, through summer holiday clubs, just through kind of one-to-one conversations. And and again, being surrounded by siblings who'd also chosen to have a faith for themselves, it seemed quite natural to me. There is a specific memory of being in the bathroom with my sister, um, where essentially I think she had said, you have to make a decision, and you have to tell Jesus that you want to follow him. And so she led me through the prayer of Jesus, I want to follow you for the rest of my life, and I'm sorry if I've done anything wrong. And however a 5-year-old articulates that.
Mm.
And I think I've just repeatedly recommitted. There were, other opportunities through youth group and through church where people would say, if you've not chosen to follow Jesus yet, or if you have and you just want to say it again, just tell him that you want to follow him. And I've chosen to say that every time that opportunity has been presented. And I think, my understanding of faith has evolved over time, as it does. Spending time with YWAM, which is an international interdenominational organization, gave me one perspective. I went to a Catholic secondary school, so I got, a Catholic perspective on faith. And now I work for a theological college, which does cater to Anglican, Baptist, and independent denominations. So I've got an input from all these different sources. I'm still filtering through it all, and I would still just call myself a Christian because I'm hesitant to commit to any one denomination. But I think I've just repeatedly realized that I couldn't live life without God, and the idea of walking away from him scares me.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense for a lot of people. It's interesting how many sort of elements of different denominations you've got. Obviously, Catholicism and Pentecostalism, Baptists and Anglicans, and there's all this stuff. But it says a couple of things. One, people are quite different and have different views. But also, I love the fact that your mum was Catholic, your dad was Pentecostal, and yet they met each other, and then hey, life became a possibility for you and your
Yeah.
family. I remember chatting with Gareth Higgs, who's a theology professor at Morelands College on the South Coast. And he said what he's enjoyed, one of the things he's enjoyed since doing that is seeing people who come along with their ardent view on whatever it is, and somebody else has a completely opposite view. And I think Catholicism and Pentecostal, there's probably a few opposites. And yet when they sort of find each one and think, hmm, yes, well, I have an issue with that, but I quite like you, all of a sudden it changes our
Yeah.
perspectives. How important do we hold on to that entrenched position? Not quite so much, actually, because hey, that needs to go in order to get married. So I love the fact that your mum and your dad came from effectively quite opposite positions in terms of the Christian faith, and yet they got together. I love it when that happens because
Yeah.
relationships matter more.
Yeah. Yes. And I think you're right. I think we did an exercise at the college not that long ago. We had a little panel discussion with people representing different denominations. And the question from the panel that really struck me that was, I can't remember if it was the first or the last question, but why do you go to the church that you go to? And I think all of the panel members, it was nothing to do or very little to do with doctrine or denominational loyalty. It was this was the church where we found welcome.
Hmm.
Maybe they'd moved into an area or something like that, and that the church that had made them feel most at home is where they stayed, regardless of which denomination it was associated with. And that I thought was quite profound, really, and how much of our church experience is to do with doctrine and how much is just to do with feeling at home and feeling a sense of community, and shared worship.
We can get hung up on what we think and what we believe and all the rest of it. In life generally, you can see between two football fans of rival teams and Manchester City United. Well, they're quite close to each other in position. They're not exactly millions of miles apart, and yet my word is there a difference of opinion on which would be the better team. And we have that replicated in all parts of society. It shouldn't be any different in the church because we've got different people, different likes, and all the rest of it. Going back to films, it's an interesting one because there are people who would love a sort of, they love the Western film, others who would hate it. Some would love a black and white film because it's, old school. Some would hate it. That's my family. Well, so The Wonderful Life, I love watching that black and white. My family don't. So one day I'll watch it black and white, I'm sure. But it's interesting how we can have such differences, and yet movies are one of those things, film, TV, it's one of those things that kind of connects us in really interesting ways because there are those who just want to go to the cinema because it's a huge screen and the best sound ever. There are some people who wouldn't care if it was, gone sepia because the TV's broken.
Mhm.
As long as they can basically see what's going on, they don't care. But again, that's kind of a nice allegory of life because we all come at things from different perspectives. And what's important for one person, the bass being perfect and the color being good, for another person, don't really care. I just want to watch the movie.
Yeah, it is. And my husband and I are kind of a prime example of this. He is much more astute when it comes to looking at the actual visual image. He'll pick up and he goes, that frame rate's off. And he's not a filmmaker, but he's just really attuned visually to things. He's got a much better sense of color than I do. And I'm going, shut up, I'm listening. I want to get through the story. Which again is why I'm not a cinematographer. My visual sense is more reduced. Um, yeah, I think ultimately, even if you are um, you know deeply invested in the visual or the audio or the effects or something, ultimately we're there for the story, aren't we? We're there for the plot, the characters, how it's going to make us feel. Um, the other things kind of either add or detract from that, depending on how well you think they're executed. Um, but the reason that we go to see a film isn't because we think it's going to look spectacular necessarily, maybe Star Wars, but we go because we go, I want to be told a story and I want to sit and, participate in that.
I think there's different sort of films of how much more realism can we get in it. I remember watching what was the film? There was a clip on the second Bad Boys film, and it's so awfully CGI that you just think, did nobody think to actually watch that afterwards and think, see, that looks really rubbish? Because this one particular scene, there's this sort of thing on a bridge and there's this crash and this car flies and it's so obviously not being properly melded into the film because it's stuck out a mile. And I remember watching thinking, wow, that's not real. And that I understand it can be cheaper to use a computer over actually shutting down a bridge and having a car do the thing it was supposed to do. But I still like seeing films that are made for real because I can spot AI writing. That is still obviously to me. You ask AI to write a piece of news, and you can spot the AI because it doesn't. It's not human. It's not real. It can't get emotion. Okay, it never will. But you can spot it in films too, and you think, oh, that's could you not have tried harder at that bit because the rest of the film was great. But then you've got
Yeah.
films like Valiant, which I love as a cartoon.
Yeah.
The level of quality, it's not Pixar or Hollywood, and yet as a film, I'm gripped every time. I love it because it's a much simpler film, but it works. And this is the thing: it doesn't always have to be picture perfect. It just has to be a good story and be. Our radio word has to be gooder enough. I'm using the word gooder a lot. I know it's not a word, but it is now. It has to be gooder enough that it's sufficiently believable to get hooked in. Valiant does that in spades. The most recent Star Trek films do that in spades. They've spent a lot of effort to make everything look consistent. And the consistency to me, I'm getting a bit geeky now myself, the consistency to me is the difference between a good film and a great film.
hmm I think that's beautifully put. Yes. I mean, you're looking back, the films that stand up are the ones that have fewer visual, um, CGI elements, really, the ones that have the physical effects and things like that, because it fits into the rest of the film and it doesn't take you out of the what's going on. It's just a seamless part of it. I watched Fall Guy, the Ryan Gosling film, recently over Easter, and I thought it was spectacular because so much of it was physically accomplished. The whole point of it is a celebration of stunt people, and so they did the stunts. And I'm sure, that there are CGI elements, but the majority of it was achieved physically, and therefore you get this consistent aesthetic, and you're not removed from what's going on because of a bad CGI moment.
And then there's stuff like Guardians of the Galaxy, which is like 99% CGI or whatever it is they're using. And I am absolutely in love with the entire film franchise because I'm hooked from the second it starts to the end. But you
Mhm.
see, the music, honestly, if you buy
Yeah.
ever just buy the Guardian of the Galaxy multiple CD soundtrack, you've got music for the rest of your life because they spent so much time getting music that wasn't just good, but absolutely added to everything it does. In fact, I start the second hour of my Thursday night show with one of the songs I thought in Guardians of the Galaxy. It's by Redbone, and it's utterly brilliant. I knew the song, but somehow seeing it used the way they did, it now starts the second hour of my Thursday night show.
I was going to say, when is the Guardians of the Galaxy, hour taking place?
Just sit and listen all day. Let's move back to the film festival that you're now running.
Yes.
Um, who is it for? Who can attend? When is it? And why would anybody want to attend? What's the selling point for you for that?
That excellent questions, Andy. So this year it's taking place on Saturday, the 17th of October. As you might guess, we've named ourselves Sheffield Christian Film and Media Festival. So it takes place in Sheffield. There's a venue that we've used for 3 years. It's a relatively cozy community venue, but they installed some amazing screening equipment. It turns out that the person who now runs the venue used to be my college tutor when I was first learning film. So, you know that he's put the good tech in there. And it's just a really nice size that, again, creates a sense of closeness and community and allows people to interact really well. So, Saturday, the 17th of October in Sheffield, all of the specific address details are on our website. And I think why people want to come to a film festival has been one of the hardest things to communicate, actually, to non-film makers. So for filmmakers, the reason to put your film into a festival is usually to kind of launch it. So if you've made a film before it gets picked up for a cinema release, you want to show it to people that make film, people that distribute film. So we receive films from filmmakers who want to give their film a shot at being put in front of an audience. And I think so. A lot of filmmakers come because they're showing their films and they want to meet other filmmakers. But we would really love for the wider Christian community to come along. If you're anybody who enjoys watching film, wants to see films that you're not going to see anywhere else because they don't have cinema releases, you want to meet the filmmakers and hear from them because we'll do Q&As and you'll get to hear some of those behind the scenes DVD extra nuggets. It's such a unique opportunity to do that. It's unique. It's never repeatable year to year because the content always changes. So every year is this once in a lifetime chance to see that specific set of films and meet the filmmakers. Um, and Sheffield is a beautiful green city. Not always in October, but it's a good place to visit if you need to make a long weekend of it.
If folks are thinking this sounds interesting, where do they go to find out all they need to know?
The best place to go is our website, which is christianfilmfestival.co.uk. And you know that we're a unique venture because that's the URL that we got. So that's christianfilmfestival.co.uk. We've also got social media presence. I don't manage it because I'm terrible with social media, but my colleague Eddie, that's his gifting. So you can find us on Facebook and Instagram. So on Facebook, it's Sheffield Christian Film Festival. On Instagram, it's just Christian Film Festival. I don't know how we got that. And I'm not sure why we weren't consistent with those handles. But you should be able to find us. The logo is the abbreviation SCFF. So if you see that, that's us.
Cool. Louise, thank you. I love talking about movies.
Yeah.
Love talking about movies with Andy Godfrey when we chat a lot because he doesn't like Star Wars and I do. Like Star
I'm on
Trek.
your side, Andy.
And I think it warms his brain because he's like, well, how can you like Star Trek and Star Wars? Well,
Mm.
I like the two. They're very different. Don't worry, Andy. We like you. So yeah, thank you. I love talking about movies. It's our passion as a family. When we get some downtime, we watch films. We have a TV license, so we buy box sets. We watch DVDs. And it's how we relax, to be honest. Especially box sets of TV stuff, which is great because you can binge watch that when we got time because we work a lot. And then movies. We're working through the Star Wars franchise at the moment. I think we have just done episode 4, the first original. We've just done that one, so we're working through. So we do have a real desire to watch movies because it can be great escapism. Guardians of the Galaxy, top of the pile for escapism. It's utter nonsense and it's brilliant, and I love it. None of that's true. It's just great. And then you got other stuff which is more realistic. But yeah, I love talking films and movies, so I'm always happy to talk about that. Louise of the Sheffield Film Festival, thank you kindly for joining us. We're going to go to some more music, but just once more, what's the website if people want to visit?
Thanks, Andy. It's christianfilmfestival.co.uk.